Uh, Hi, it's Professor Marsh, and this is Unit 11. Welcome back to Principles of Management. This unit, Unit 11 is Chapter 11 in both editions, and the chapter in the two editions is virtually identical. It's a short but important chapter on how to motivate employees, how to understand employee motivation. If we define management as the process of getting things done through other people, motivation is the way managers get other people to do things and do them the right way. If you think of management as captaining a ship through a sea of business, motivation is the way you power the engine and turn the rudder. Have you ever seen the TV show Undercover Boss, where the CEO of a large company, usually well known, will disguise himself or herself and work as a frontline worker for a week or two to see what the employees really think and what the job challenges are? Companies that are already successful want to find out what works and how to replicate it. And companies that are underperforming want to see what the heck's going on down there in the trenches. This chapter suggests some methods that managers can use to develop that understanding without resorting to the game plan that we see on TV. Okay, what is motivation? That's our first chapter objective. And to define it, the book says, this is the process by which a person's efforts are energized, directed, and sustained toward a goal. Employees like pay and perks, but what they really want is to love what they do. There's energy. Energy is a measure of intensity or drive. A direction, effort that's directed toward and consistent with the organization's goal. And persistence. You want to motivate employees to work with energy, to work with direction, and to work with persistence. And persistence is keeping going until the goal is achieved and then keep going to the next goal. And again, it's the best way to motivate employees is to get employees who love what they do, or to design the jobs to make it more likely that the employees will love what they do. It's not just about money, although money's important. The book then reviews early theories of motivation in human behavior, and this is section 11-2 in both of our texts. And we're going to look at four early theories of motivation. Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, McGregor's theory X and theory Y, Hertzberg's two-factor theory, and McClelland's three needs theory. So those four early theories. And they're presented quite well in the book in a very pleasing display in the book. Lots of pretty pictures and colors, and certainly Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory lends itself to that, because this theory says that every person has a hierarchy of needs, and it's kind of like a pyramid, and you can see the pyramid in your book. And you can't move up to the next level until you have satisfied the lower level. In other words, they build on top of each other. So that the first need is physiological, food, shelter, clothing, that sort of thing. The second is safety, security and protection from harm. Then on top of that, you put social needs, affection, belongingness, friendship. Then the fourth is esteem, both internal, liking yourself and respecting yourself, and external esteem. And then the fifth is self-actualization, where you actually grow as a person, you achieve your potential. We may have had this discussion earlier in the semester about each person, having certain talents and finding your talents and using them effectively and achieving your potential. Self-actualization is the highest need, according to Maslow. But what Maslow's theory also says is that once a need is substantially satisfied, it no longer motivates. So there gets to be a point where people have enough food and shelter, they have enough safety, they have enough affection, belongingness, and friendship, and so you have to motivate them otherwise with that. And perhaps the example that we looked at with the gosh, I forgot the name of the grocery store at this point, but there's a social affiliation at places like Ben and Jerry's and gosh, I'm going to pause it for just a second and look up the name of the store I've forgotten. Trader Joe's is the name of the grocery store. So that is a place in which employees are motivated by belonging to the group, feeling part of a family, feeling part of a team. But once you get once you pay people enough that they can meet all their needs, money no longer motivates, and I think that's one of the things that we realize from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Lower order needs are satisfied externally. So food, clothing, shelter, security, those are typically satisfied externally, and then higher order needs like esteem and self-actualization are satisfied internally. Okay, that's Maslow. That's the first of the old theories. McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X, a negative view of people that assumes workers have little ambition, dislike work, want to avoid responsibility, and need to be closely controlled to work effectively. That's the the sort of the theory of the slave driver. People work as hard as they have to, but no more. Theory Y is a positive view that assumes employees enjoy work, seek out and accept responsibility, and exercise self-direction. McGregor, in his time, was somewhat revolutionary for encouraging use of Theory Y practice to maximize employee motivation. You can't really go into an organization, and say the beating will continue until morale improves. So in McGregor's time, Theory X was the norm, and you just ratchet up the production line and increase the quotas and just make sure that the employees keep working and work as hard as they can until they collapse or until it's time to go home. So more Theory Y was important in McGregor's time, but a combination of both might be needed. Perhaps some techniques and practices work better in different situations or at the same time with different employees. And I think that's really what more the modern theories are, is that you have to look at the individual employee and their makeup and behavior and history in order to determine exactly what motivates them. Hertzberg had a two-factor theory, what's called the motivation-hygiene theory. And hygiene doesn't just mean cleanliness in this. It means hygiene means factors that eliminate jobs dissatisfaction but don't motivate. So good supervision, proper supervision, supervisor maybe who is friendly and relatable, company policy that seems fair and that provides for safe working conditions and a fair salary, status, and security. Those are the hygiene factors. And then motivators are factors that increase job satisfaction and motivation. Things like achievement, recognition, enjoying the work itself, responsibility, having responsibility that you're able to advance from, and personal growth. And intrinsic factors are related to job satisfaction. Extrinsic factors, according to Hertzberg, are related to job dissatisfaction. And the opposite of satisfaction is not dissatisfaction. So that was an interesting thing for me to learn from the book's presentation. So that's then we can move on to McClellan's three needs theory. This is the fourth of our historic or traditional theories of motivation. And McClellan identifies various needs, need for achievement, need for power, need for affiliation, uh, and people who are high in need for achievement uh, strive for personal achievement rather than the trappings and rewards of success. So high achievers avoid very easy or very difficult tasks because they want to take on tasks that they know that they can complete and achieve. Uh, Achievers. And the best managers tend to be, well, high in personal achievement, but also high in need for power and low in need for affiliation. And so that's kind of a traditional view. And I have to say that probably, good old Maslow is the one that most appeals to me in terms of its predictive ability. Although the book shows us then that we have some contemporary theories of motivation, and there's 5 of those, or 4 of those, and then one that integrates it. And I think that really a combination of factors and techniques are things that modern managers have to be aware of. And you may recognize a situation that you find in your company in which you might try one technique, whether it's one of the contemporary ones or one of the historical ones, in order to motivate an employee. And you just have to get a sense for it, and perhaps look at all the factors, all the data, and use those techniques that seem to work in terms of motivating and getting the results that you want to get from an employee or a given group of employees. But some of the contemporary theories of motivation that you'll see in the book are goal setting theory, job characteristics theory, equity theory, and expectancy theory. And then we'll talk about integrating those theories. Goal setting theory, and this is in the book in this is in section 11-3. Goal setting theory is one that it is appealing to me. I mean, it's certainly something that I use on a daily basis. I have to-do lists and certain goals for what I need to accomplish. Just setting goals tends to improve performance. I think if you are diligent about setting goals and then trying to accomplish those goals, and perhaps breaking down tasks into its smaller pieces, you can perform more effectively and maybe even more efficiently. So the goal setting theory posits that specific goals increase performance, and difficult goals, when accepted, result in higher performance than do easy goals. But it has 3 requirements. One is employee commitment to the goal. 2 is what your author calls self-efficacy. The employee must believe that he or she can accomplish the goal. And then 3, and I think this is something it's not new in either of these editions, but it's something that was probably added over time, is a compatible national culture. As we work more and more internationally, we find that what works in the United States doesn't necessarily work, say, in Europe. And what works in Western cultures and in capitalist societies definitely doesn't work in socialist countries when you're having to do business there, or communist countries. So goal setting theory, I think, though, is a very helpful technique for motivation, and certainly for one, making sure that you are working with employees who know what your goals are and have a reasonable timetable for accomplishing them. And it certainly helps in holding employees accountable, for their actions. That's a nice management tool to use. And of course, if you can get the employees to buy into the goals and set them together as part of their work plan for the year, then I think, you're more likely to get the deliverables that you expect. than if you just hope for the best or just say, get as much done as you can. And I think it's nice to have a target. Ready, aim, fire, right? Not ready, fire, aim. The next contemporary theory is the job characteristics model. Managers can design jobs that motivate employees. And JCM, job characteristics model, is a framework for analyzing and designing jobs or redesigning jobs that identify 5 primary core job functions, their interrelationship, and their impact on outcomes. Job design, the way the tasks are, that's defined as the way the tasks are combined to form complete jobs. Job enrichment is the vertical expansion of a job by adding planning and evaluation responsibilities. And oftentimes that does motivate employees if they are involved in the planning and the evaluation process. One helps to provide accountability because management can come in and review how those plans were accomplished, and it also, of course, helps in evaluation and in designing compensation systems and other rewards. Job redesign is where managers redefine and modify job dimensions to improve performance and or the satisfaction of workers. And remember, workers work best, most effectively and efficiently when they love their jobs. And the 5 core job dimensions are skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy, and feedback. And those are very important. Now, I do have to say that the model that's presented in your book is a little unwieldy, and I tend to think of it in terms of sort of a process or a list as opposed to a schematic with all those boxes. Once you get above, you get up to 13 boxes, it's kind of hard to visualize it and keep it straight, and you may end up focusing on things that are less relevant, and just to make sure you consider all 13 boxes. Equity theory is the theory that an employee compares his or her job's input to the outcome ratio with that of relevant others and corrects any inequity. Now, this is really, I think, a valid observation, particularly in large organizations or in organizations in which you have very high-performing professionals, and maybe in all organizations. And then there's the concept of the referent. That's the person, systems, or selves employees compare themselves against in order to assess equity. Employees can be tough on themselves too. They can say, I didn't do such a good job on this, but I got a good review and I'm, getting paid more money, and, it doesn't matter what kind of job I do. So, sometimes it's important to hold people accountable when they do a bad job. And I've certainly seen that in practice as well. But the theory posits that when inequities are perceived, when employees notice that there are inequities in treatment, that employees attempt to do something about it. They might have higher or lower productivity. It can motivate people to get on the ball and do as well as the person next to them, but as well as good examples, you can have bad examples too. So they might say, well, the other guy's goofing off, so I'm going to goof off too. And so, it's important to have a culture where people are perceiving that there is a bias toward action, and that people are reinforced in a positive way by how they perceive others to be working around them. And that can affect the quality of the output. That can affect whether people are showing up for work on time or whether they're late, whether they're engaged with their job and with the organization, or whether they want to quit. So it's a consideration of both distributive justice, the fairness of rewards, and also procedural justice, the fairness of the process or treatment. And both of those are important, and the fairness of the rewards isn't necessarily the most important. There was a great example in popular culture about a decade ago. There was a movie with Rachel McAdams and Ford called Morning Glory. And it was about the horrible problems with perceptions of inequity among the workers at a major television network's morning show. There was the correspondent with impossibly bad diction who was sleeping with the boss, and so nobody couldn't fire or correct her. And then you had the anchor man who was sexually harassing his coworkers, but he was the highest paid star employee. And the Rachel McAdams character had to come into the situation and to fix this very dysfunctional workspace. And it's a great example of dealing with, sort of I don't know what you call it. It's maybe an example of cognitive dissonance between the culture that you expect at a large, professional organization, and one that is, actually operating very dysfunctionally and very poorly. And the techniques that Rachel McAdams uses to fix those problems and to improve the performance is actually a good example, a good case study in some of the tough decisions as a manager you sometimes have to make. So note the inequities always are responded to, if not corrected, by managers. If they're not corrected by the managers, they will be by the employees, even if it requires whistleblowing or sabotage. And the question is always what's fair, what's equitable. So distributive justice, that component is fair pay and benefits. Procedural justice, though, is increasingly recognized as equally or more important than distributive justice. And that's, the question of whether the process of setting pay and benefits is fair, and is the treatment of workers fair and decent. So very interesting observations about equity theory. I think that's quite valid. And then there's expectancy theory, and I also think expectancy theory is certainly one that you see in practice. This is the theory that an individual tends to act in a certain way based on the expectation that the act will be followed by a given outcome and on the attractiveness of the outcome to the individual. So this is the Skinner box. Okay, this is pure, behavioral science theory. And so you've got individual effort that leads to individual performance, that leads to organizational rewards, that leads to the satisfying of individual goals. This is Exhibit 11.8. And I do think, when the rat goes through the maze, that's a really bad example. But it expects to get the little food pellet at the end of the maze. And if it doesn't, it might stop going through the maze. And that really is a horrible example. I work in a highly professional organization with people who were certainly not rats going through mazes. And a lot of what we do is more about, trying to, at the esteem level, or maybe even occasionally at the self-actualization level. But, for a lot of workers, they're asking themselves, these questions. And I think really, to a certain level, all of us are. How hard do I have to work to achieve a certain level of performance? Perhaps as a student, that's a question that you ask yourselves: how hard do I have to work in this class to get an A? If that's your objective, can I actually do that? What reward will I get for reaching it? And how much do I want that reward? So, why do you want an A in a class? Well, maybe you want to go to graduate school, or maybe you want to go into business and show that you had an A in principles of management. But anyhow, it's a good theory, and one that I think that is borne out by a number of studies. And I also noted that the proponent of this theory is the wonderfully Dickensian named Victor Vroom. So he certainly gets some high performance out of that engine. And integration of theories, There's Exhibit 11-9, which is very, very busy, but it puts it all together. You start with expectancy theory as the spine of the model, and you add job design and equity components at the appropriate junctures in the process. Don't forget about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and McClelland's 3 needs. And this appeals to the best aspects of McGregor's theory, Y preference, and Hertzberg's 2-factor theory, while still providing for basic needs, responsibilities, and accountability for meeting performance goals. This is the core of what managers do in managing employees. But note that it involves not only contemporary theories such as equity and job design, but also the best of the traditional theories of motivation, especially the hierarchy of needs from Maslow and McClelland's 3 needs theory. And then the book ends with a discussion of some of the current issues in motivating employees, as far as, how do you motivate employees during an economic downturn? What can you do during an economic downturn to keep employees engaged with a company that seems that, maybe it's failing, maybe the industry is failing, maybe the whole economy is failing. And sometimes motivation is hard to find as business contracts in a downturn. Motivating employees globally and dealing with different cultural issues. Motivating a diverse workforce, even in the United States or in one particular country. If you have a diverse group of employees, and that can be all sorts of diversity. It can be, it's not necessarily just race, sex, gender, ethnicity. It can be, class. It can be people's backgrounds and histories, their family situations, and so oftentimes it takes some time as a manager to figure out, how people tick and what works and what doesn't work, and how do you design an appropriate rewards program, and that's really that's something that I don't know that there's one size that fits all or one reward system that is appropriate in all situations. But what I've seen is that if you can design an appropriate rewards program, that the employees who are responsible for the success of the organization share in that success. I do think that is usually perceived to be fairest, and certainly the employees have a strong sense of the equity of pay equity with respect to the contributions that are made by their fellow workers, and so that's something to keep in mind, because if somebody feels like somebody's just kind of doesn't have their oar in the water, and they're having to row the boat by themselves, they might decide to stop rowing also, and that's bad for the whole organization. So that's Unit 11. Until next time, I believe the next unit, Unit 12, will be about leadership. Very important unit in management. And until then, have a great day, and we'll talk with you later. Bye-bye.